The Battle of Najaf took place on 28 January 2007 at Zarqa near Najaf, Iraq, between Iraqi security forces and fighters initially thought to be Iraqi insurgents but later reported to be members of the Shia Islam cult Soldiers of Heaven, who had joined a gathering of worshippers, or, by other accounts, a conflict originally between an Iraqi government forces checkpoint and 200 armed pilgrims, which then expanded to include local residents, the Soldiers of Heaven group, and UK and US forces. Iraqi official account. In the lead-up to the day of Ashura, which involves large numbers of pilgrims traveling, some to Najaf, for Shiite festivals, the Iraqi officials were said to have discovered a plot to assassinate the Grand Ayatollah Ali al-Sistani and other Shia religious leaders by the insurgents. Alleged plans called for the insurgents to disguise themselves as pilgrims and suddenly open fire, in attempts to assassinate as many leading Shiite clerics as possible and cause overall disruption of the holiday. Violent attacks have occurred in Najaf during previous Ashura festivals. The initial raid by the Iraqi security forces against suspected insurgent hideout turned into heavy fighting, with the Iraqi army almost being overwhelmed. The government forces began to retreat but were soon surrounded and pinned down. During the hours-long battle, rebel fighters captured one wounded Iraqi soldier. They treated him at the compound and sent him back to his comrades with a message saying, "The Imam is coming back." At one point the Iraqi forces called on the radio to say that they were running low on ammunition. The fighting became so intense that support from US and British attack helicopters and F-16 fighter jets was called in. The airstrikes carried out by Special Forces operators partnered with the Iraqi army helped break the stalemate, but not before one American R-64 attack helicopter was shot down, killing 2 US soldiers. Military Transition Team 0810, partnered with the Iraqi army, was first to respond to the Apache helicopter crash as the Soldiers of Heaven cult was attempting to seize the crash site. Once the crash site was secured by US forces and the enemy disposition was ascertained, further support was requested. The Iraqi army was still unable to advance, and they called in support from both an elite Iraqi unit known as Hilla SWAT, which is based to the north in Hilla, and U.S. motorized infantry troops. Around 1 p.m., elements of the 2nd Battalion, 3rd Infantry Regiment, part of 3rd Stryker Brigade Combat Team, 2nd Infantry Division were dispatched from near Baghdad. Some of the gunmen managed to break out toward Karbala. On the 1st of February, the city of Najaf was cordoned off, and subsequently Iraqi government and U.S. forces appeared to be involved in heavy fighting, including helicopter gunship support. The opposing forces seemed to be militants inside the city limits. This seemingly contradicted initial assessment that the hostile group was effectively destroyed after the Battle of 28 January. But independently verified information was not available at the time. Controversy. The other account of the incident was presented in the newspaper articles by Patrick Cockburn and Working Together, Dar Jamal and Ali Al-Fadli. According to this version, at around 6 a.m., Hajj Saad Naif al-Haytami, chief of the Hawatim Shia tribe, led a group of armed pilgrims from that tribe to a security checkpoint. Security forces killed al-Haytami, his wife, and his driver. The pilgrims, who had walked alongside the car to the checkpoint, then attacked the security forces in retaliation. A local tribe, the Khazari, tried to stop the fighting but were shot at in the crossfire. Iraqi troops at the checkpoint reported al-Qaeda forces were attacking and more security forces arrived in response, surrounding the Hawatim. The Hawatim tried unsuccessfully to stop the fighting at this stage. Firing continued and a U.S. helicopter was shot down. U.S. aircraft bombarded the area until early the next morning. 120 Hawatiman local residents were killed. The group led by Ahmed al-Hassani was based in the local area of the fighting and was drawn into it. They, the Hawatim and the Khazari, were opposed to groups that make the core of the Baghdad government. The presence of Ahmed al-Hassani's group provided justification for a massacre of opponents to important groups in the Iraqi government. A radical Shiite cleric, Ayatollah Mahmoud al-Hassan al-Saki, was reported on 6 February 2007 to be calling for an independent inquiry into what many in Iraq now regard as a massacre, in which scores of women and children were killed. The Speaker of the Iraqi Parliament, Mahmoud al-Mashhadani, accused the government of concealing the truth about the event. Aftermath. At least 6 Iraqi policemen and 5 Iraqi soldiers had died in the fighting along with the 2 American soldiers. Another 15 policemen and 15 soldiers were wounded, among them was Najaf's police chief. Another Iraqi military official put the death toll for Iraqi security forces at 25. U.S. and Iraqi troops killed 400 and captured 406 rebels in the fierce fighting around the city. The majority of the fighters were Iraqi, but Brigadier General Fadl Baweri stated that the group included 30 Afghans and Saudis and 1 Sudanese fighter. Shiite political sources said the gunmen appeared to be both Sunnis and Shiites loyal to a heretical cleric called Ahmed Ismail Khat, and linked to the militant group Ansar al-Sunnah. The Iraqi army said it captured some 500 automatic rifles in addition to mortars, at least 40 machine guns, and even some Russian-made Katyusha rockets and anti-aircraft missiles. Information recovered from dead and captured fighters indicate they belonged to a renegade Shiite group which called themselves the Soldiers of Heaven and have been described as an apocalyptic religious cult. The cult leader, Ahmed Ismail Khat, who claimed to be the Mahdi, a messiah, in Shia Islam. Iraqi officials said that the militant leader, Ahmed Ismail Khat, was a Sunni from a Sunni stronghold of Zubair near Basra in the south. He represented himself as Ahmed Hassan al-Yamani to win over support for his cause. He was identified as a deputy to the cult leader Dir Abdul Zahra Qadim, who was believed to be a former security officer from the old regime. Their actual names and identities were also questioned. The U.S. military has referred to them only as gunmen, not insurgents or terrorists. Dir Abdul Zahra was killed in the fighting while the whereabouts of Ahmed Hassani al-Yemeni were not known. The Iraqi authorities may also have exaggerated their own military success. The signs are that they underestimated the strength of the Soldiers of Heaven and had to call for urgent American air support. One U.S. advisor to Iraqi security forces cautioned against exaggerated casualty reports from the Iraqi government, saying, "There are rumors everywhere. The whole situation is so bizarre." The advisor also questioned how the Soldiers of Heaven force had grown and remained undetected until this conflict. Iraqi officials say the group's stronghold included tunnels, trenches and blockades. The same location was also reported to include a swimming pool, air-conditioned beauty salon, car bomb-making workshop and a car dismantling workshop, and was described as a compound. A neighbor said the residents had a history of criminal activity, including car theft. After the battle, Iraqi police rounded up hundreds of sect members and put them on trial. On the 2nd of September 2007, the criminal court passed judgment on 458 accused. 10 leaders of the Soldiers of Heaven were sentenced to death, 54 members were released, and the rest were sentenced to jail terms ranging from 15 years to life. Najaf Police Chief Brigadier General Abdul Karim Mustafa said,